goal our series has, and that is to share how others, including today's BASE partner, are using BASE to change the lives of students within their district. We have done a few of these at this point, and it's been really neat to see not just the lives changed, those in the way of the students, but also the teachers. The teachers are now able to connect with those students in ways that they may have not in the past, thanks to BASE. A helpful quote for today, just to share that myself and today's guest are not the only people talking about social and emotional learning. You see that Dr. Mary Helen Imordino Yang, I think I pronounced that correctly. She says that emotion is essential to learning. Emotion is where learning begins, or as is often the case, where it ends. Put simply, it's literally neurobiologically impossible to think deeply about the things that you don't care about. I read that a couple of times, and while it may sound obvious, if you really dig deep into that, there's a lot of meat there, and it is giving us great topic for what Bella Lugo will speak of today. Bella, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Well, Bella and I were talking just a moment ago. Bella is in Charles County, Maryland. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona today, and I think we have about a 50-degree temperature differential. Is that about right, Bella?
It's about 40 right here. It was 70 yesterday, though.
Okay. Well, Bella, thank you so much for joining us today. What I wanted to do was just give you an opportunity to speak to kind of the past, present, and future as it pertains to Charles County. So how about we just speak currently about who you are and what you do within Charles County?
Okay, I am our mental health coordinator for the system. Each school system in Maryland is required to have one, and really the position kind of varies between schools. My primary role here is with risk assessments, threat assessments. I'm also a liaison between our school counselors, school psychologists, and our pupil personnel workers and student services, and then also finding programs and supports for our students and sharing information with our school administrators. So that's primarily what my role is.
Sounds like you do everything but sweep the floors. That's a lot.
You know, I've learned many things over these last 2 years in this position.
I bet. Bella, for those that don't know, can you talk about the number of students and schools that Charles County is made up of?
I know we have approximately 27,000 students. I am not quite sure on our number of schools.
Okay, no problem. One could guess that of 27,000 students, that's a lot of schools. So
I think we're at like 38, 40, something like that.
Okay. So you mentioned a moment ago that every school in Maryland is required to have a mental health coordinator. For how long has that been the case? Do you know?
It was implemented for the school year 2019-20.
Great. So if I'm doing the math, you were brought on at about that same time.
I actually took the position right before COVID hit.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's so much humor wrapped around that. I just won't touch on it. So understanding that you have not been in Charles County for years and years, but the last 2 years, if you think of some of what the district has been made up of, what we're going to be speaking of today, not just for Bella's benefit, but also for those of you listening, we're thinking of Charles County past, present, and future. So in the past, what did social emotional learning look like? What are you doing today? And then what are you looking forward to tomorrow? So here's a sampling of the questions that Bill and I will be discussing. So let's start with the SDL journey for Charles County. Bella, I realize you don't know the entire journey, having been there just for the past 2 years, but can you speak about where maybe Charles County is relative to where they were 2 years ago?
Well, I would say 2 years ago, primarily SEL was only taught through our science lessons. We've progressed now to where our teachers are actually providing instruction within the classrooms. And also with the BASE program, we're using it in different ways here to promote social emotional learning and just overall mental health for students. In the beginning with, for example, when we took on BASE, we had a limited number of seats. And now all of our students at the secondary, which is middle school and high school level, have access to it. And we're utilizing it that way. Trying to think what else, how it's changed. It was difficult, I would say, with COVID because we had really only rolled it out, the BASE program, and with the limited seats. But then when we moved into having it, more on a more broader aspect, we had more people get involved with it and able to use it and trained more people.
Understood. So if I caught a snippet of what you had said a moment ago correctly, Bella, you were saying that teachers are now teaching SEL within their classroom. So is this more, as it relates to social and emotional learning, is this something that is taught in each one of the classrooms, or is social and emotional learning more of a focused time throughout the day where the teacher is teaching it at that time, as opposed to throughout the school day?
It depends on the school system. Most of our students at the elementary level receive it usually at the beginning of the day as like a preparation to set the right tone for the day. That's primarily how they're using it. But then again, like I said, since we're site-based, each school administrator is using it differently.
Great. So there's some autonomy as to how that school may implement it different than the next.
Yes.
Great, great. So in the past 2 years, even though it may be a short period of time over the course of what Charles County has been focusing on with social and emotional learning, can you speak to any of the hurdles that administration, and particularly in your role, hurdles that you've had to clear to help teachers implement this throughout their school day?
Well, in the past, I would say teachers have always thought about SEL as more as the student services support staff responsibility, like for the school going and teaching lessons, or the school psychologist being involved with it. Trying to get the buy-in to seeing how it's, I would say, beneficial for them in the classroom has been challenging. And also one of the things is also getting the buy-in from the school administrators. I know one of the things we did, we were rolling out one program at I would say the elementary level, is that we, found administrators who were on board with social emotional learning and mental health and found value in it, and had them speak to their, say, school administrators who were kind of skeptical about it, and let them tell the benefits of it to their peers, essentially. And then even again, like with our secondary level, challenges that we have, especially at the high school level, is how students have so much seat time to earn a credit. That's been difficult for us to get it being implemented daily within the school setting. So it's primarily, we're using it more on an individualized basis versus a whole school system. I mean, a whole school using it across the board.
Sure. So the idea is for that teacher who may be struggling to, or the administrator who may be struggling to wrap their mind around the SEL, particularly at the high school levels, they're saying, well, if this isn't credit bearing, then it is time wasted because we need these students to get credits. Is that paraphrasing what you said?
Definitely. And one of the things right now, we've been charged, like with the blueprint policy, one of the areas that we're looking at is how can we bring SEL and make students more successful in the classroom, in the school setting. And one of my suggestions was actually building in an SEL classroom time for students at the secondary level, just so that they have that structured time to receive, the social emotional learning supports. Because a lot of times what we see is not poor classroom management, but classroom management spends a lot of time in the instructional day, and then also trying to limit those interruptions just because students are having either conflicts or their own personal issues that they're trying to deal with, and maybe not using the proper behavior or language to share their concerns.
Sure. So in the way of maybe it's clearing the perception or clearing the objection, you mentioned that you proposed there be a time set aside per day for social
Mhm.
emotional learning. Are there any other initiatives that are helping to address that objection or clear that hurdle?
Well, I would say we recently, this year, we have a brand new superintendent and deputy superintendent. And also our Board of Ed is very much on board with mental health and social emotional learning. And it seems to be a focus for the Board of Ed and then our our system administrators. So that's been very helpful because
Sure.
they value in it and they want to see it incorporated across all curriculums, not just say, for example, in the elementary curriculum. One of the things that they've asked their elementary, secondary specialists, their art specialists, and their health PE specialists is they've been charged with adding SEL into their curriculum. Um,
Awesome.
so they're working on embedding that in their curriculum so it's not just like a standalone program, but it's integrated throughout the day in all aspects.
Awesome. Awesome. Some of our current BASE partners will know this if you're listening today, but BASE creates pathways. And Bella, you may be aware of this through your work with Kathy, our exceptional
Mm-hmm.
services representative. That pathway can accompany core area instruction so that the curriculum department or the teacher doesn't have to guess as to which content or module within BASE is most appropriate, but we've kind of done the work for you. Bella, something that you said a moment ago, it brought me back to a conversation I had with Sue Rowe at Toledo Public Schools. You were talking about how the administration is on board. You have new administration. Yes, they're on board. Yes, they agree that mental health is an area of focus. Sue had mentioned it takes time. And initially when I heard it, I thought, I'm thinking of it takes a certain time throughout the day. But what Sue mentioned, and I'm sure you would agree, Bella, it could be 2 or 3 years getting social and emotional learning entrenched within a district. It's not an overnight thing. There's
No.
certainly a practice and a strategy to do so. Would you agree?
Oh, definitely. Just like I said, with them charging the departments and curriculums to move this forward, it's really, this is brand new, say, for example, to our health and PE department or to our arts department. How are they incorporating it into like an art class? This is brand new to them. I know some of the hurdles that we've come across is they want to use it, but then there's some certain aspects of it like confidentiality. Say if the student, says something in the base program or something, how do they handle it? Who do they need to go to? That has been like some of the things that we've come across just with implementing it across the board, social emotional learning. Yeah. But yeah, it's, even though we started this about 2 years ago, it's still getting everybody on board and seeing the value of it
Yeah,
is still the challenge. And then
that's
fitting
the
it into
time
the
you
schedule.
speak of, right? It's
Excuse me,
taking
say.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, that is a little bit of the present as well. I thought that I would mention that COVID, it has certainly I know certainly within Maryland, but across the country, it
Mhm.
has illuminated the need for a focus on social emotional health. If you notice on our screen at this point, McKinsey and Company, through a partnership that they did with the DOE and the Office for Civil Rights, they said that in 2020, students learned only 67% of the math and 87% of the reading that their grade level peers would have in prior years. And then the statistic that really jumped out to me was the loss of learning and academic achievement is affecting our students, tomorrow's adults, if you will, today's students, tomorrow's adults, in the way of $61,000 to $82,000 in lifetime earnings. So that's early reports. Obviously, time will tell. But I'm wondering, as we're still going through the pandemic, how do you feel within Charles County COVID has increased the need for social and emotional learning?
What I've seen is, so we went full time back in our buildings this school year. There was issues with transitioning back, adapting to structure, the workloads. But then really with the social emotional part was how to handle peer conflicts and resolution, regulate their emotions, because a lot of our students are having difficulties with depression and anxiety. That seems to be the case across the board, every age level, down to our youngest ones who, well, they may say, I want to harm myself, but they're not really meaning that they want to harm themselves, but they don't have the words to maybe express themselves, or the coping skills to be able to express themselves appropriately and manage their emotions. So really it's the workload, the anxiety, that social interactions that they had, and trying to figure out how to do that again with others, and if they have a conflict with someone, how to manage that. I've also seen there's been a heightened aggression, and I think that kind of also goes back to the conflict resolution, where they may not have had to interact with each other on a regular basis because they didn't have the opportunity to see each other in person.
Sure. Bella, when we were starting our conversation today, you had mentioned the years of experience that you've had, excuse me, in other districts across Maryland. If you're a mental health coordinator new to today's webinar, and maybe you've just been put in this position, or you too are experiencing some of what you have just mentioned in Charles County, what would you say professionally, take base out of the equation, what would you say professionally to that mental health coordinator as maybe as an encouragement to get through what is kind of new for them and for the students? Do you have any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. To get through COVID, I would go back to the basics. I think a lot of people are in reactive mode. And prior to this, we were taught how to do these things. We were taught how to, that support. But I think we've become really focused on reacting to the situations and our foundational skills that we learned. That would be my suggestion. I know some people are like, who are in the school buildings would disagree. But I think really we have those foundational skills. It's just getting back to them and using them and moving forward. I think that would also, because I mean, if we know what we can do, and I think building that confidence in ourselves and relying on our skills is really important right now.
That's great. So maybe in your reaction, do not overreact. Go back to the
Yeah.
So you did speak a little bit of this a moment ago, but in terms of the implementation of BASE specifically, can you speak more to that in terms of how you have implemented it?
We have used it in different ways, I think, than like more so than as a tier 1 approach. Let's see. So for example, our school counselors may use it based on the student needs. They're just concerns that when students are referred to them. Our school psychologists who maybe meet with students on a regular basis may use it as a support or a supplemental with them, just to have students learn more about whatever the concern is and how to handle things. Because a lot of the students over COVID have become so savvy with using technology, sometimes they enjoy, instead of someone talking with them, being able to go through something on their own. We've also used it like when we have our student support team meetings, if a concern comes about in the meeting, say for example, with behavior or social emotional learning, having the student work through a base course that would address one of their concerns. Let's see, what else? Our school administrators have been using it as more of a reflection sometimes for disruptive behaviors. I went ahead and created a matrix based on our code of conduct and aligned the different courses with different office referrals or discipline referrals. The easiest one I could speak about would be like, for example, if the student has concerns with truancy, having them work through the truancy course and how their behavior affects not only right now for them, but also their future. And then also the impulsive thinking seems to play a lot into the different discipline referrals that they're receiving. So while a student might be in ISI, well, in-school suspension or Saturday school, instead of having them do something else that's not productive for them, other than they're like making up their work or something like that, the administrator will have them work through the course, so that they have a better understanding of how their behavior impacts, themselves and others.
Sure.
And there's more. Let's see. So our health teachers are using the portions for the drug and alcohol courses to supplement their curriculum. And then one of the other things that we've kind of did with a twist is we are offering this year parent caregiver workshops. And so let me step back. Let me go back a second. Our school counselors also were provided a course schedule to use each month. So all school counselors may be using the depression course in the month of October or something like that. And we tried to align our parent caregiver workshops with whatever the student's learning in the classroom that month. So for example, if it was depression in October, we would have a depression parent caregiver workshop where we teach this parents, this is what your students learned about in the school. These are ways that you can support them, and we're using the information from BASE that way. And we've seen a lot of value with that, because parents, it's interesting as a mental health professional, a lot of things I take for granted, I think people, parents may not know. And it's been interesting, the feedback that we've received, because they're very grateful that somebody's taking time with the social emotional learning and the mental health and providing them with skills. And BASE has allowed us to take the information and present it in a way that's already kind of out there for us, so that we can use it and not have to recreate the wheel necessarily.
Sure. Did you call them parent and caregiver workshops? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I love all of what you said there, but specifically about the parent and caregiver workshops. Oftentimes when we're sharing BASE with those interested in it, they clamp onto the parent and guardian courses in a way to help with their community engagement initiatives. So I'm assuming the caregiver workshops, that is a community engagement type of initiative. Is that fair to assume?
Yes, it is.
Great. Okay.
And one of the reasons we've looked at, and it's funny, our school counselors are always like, when are you going to turn on the parent caregiver feature? Only issue that our IT department is kind of hesitant about certain things, just with all the different security issues. So right now we're not using it. So we're using it in a different way by using it as the virtual workshops.
I see. Well, I still think it speaks to the benefit of that parent and guardian course, because if I understood you correctly, Bella, you have a student, so Johnny in class is learning about anxiety and depression, and now in your parent and caregiver workshops, you're able to use the parent and guardian course within BASE titled Anxiety and Depression, so that they see what Johnny sees, right?
Yes. And then they have the same language that the student has for the, and able to discuss it with them. And it opens the communication, I think, between parent and child. And also, I think when the child knows that their parent's interested in finding out more about what's going on in their classroom or their school setting, it helps them to be like, hey, my mom and dad are actually interested in me, other than just, am I getting good grades?
So it sounds like you're giving not only skills to both parties, but you're also kind of opening up some lines of communication.
Yeah, that's definitely.
Can I speak about communication? The feedback that we've been getting over the last few years is that BASE has enabled a connection between teacher and student, or counselor and student, that maybe there hasn't been in the past. Simply because now we're talking about these things, or a student may be a little bit more brave when typing about their feelings on a computer than they are speaking those words to the teacher or to their therapist or counselor. Can you speak to any of those scenarios, or maybe outcomes or results that you've experienced within Charles County?
I would say definitely yes. They're more open sometimes to, put it in in BASE in one of the courses, and I think knowing that, that the counselor or therapist or whoever is monitoring it and will read it, they know, I might not be able to say it directly to them, or I'm uncomfortable to say it, but I know I can say it, in this platform, and they'll still be able to help me, which again, like I said, opens that door of communication, because a lot of times when you have a student come into your office or something and you want to talk to them, they're kind of, one, you have to earn their trust. Two, they might not be comfortable talking about it, or they don't even have the words necessarily to talk about it. And I think BASE kind of provides them with that platform to share more information in a safer way for them that they're used to, just from technology aspect. I think that's helpful for them.
Sure. Bella, you may have just answered the next question, but I'll ask it anyways. What do you like most about the platform?
I mentioned the pathways before, and I think that has been helpful for us, because not having to recreate the wheel, and we can utilize that information, like, and you can either go into it like as an instructional, like with the classroom, or using it on an individual basis. I think that's been really helpful, and I think our school counselors like that flexibility, and our school psychologists. I'm excited when I heard about, what is it, Baseline? I became very excited about that, and our staff got trained in that, and I'm hoping at the beginning of the next school year that we can roll that out across all the schools. Because just looking at the information and seeing where our students are concerned most about certain things, and where we need to focus our, say, social emotional learning and our groups, is really important for us, because the baseline will give us an idea, and then also how it creates different courses for each student to either work through, and we can assign them that way. I really am looking forward to using that. And again, I guess really just the ease of it. Once you learn how to use it and being able to assign courses and monitoring it, I think it provides a good way to make sure and checking in with our students that they're doing okay.
Bella, you mentioned Baseline. If I could just do a plug here to give those some context as to what it is. BASE created Baseline because many of our partners were saying, well, we need a way to understand if there has been progress made. We don't just want to lay content in front of people, cross our fingers, or I should say, lay content in front of students, cross our fingers that it works, but not really have any way to measure whether it did or not. So Baseline is, think of it like kind of like a universal screener, where it is an assessment with 41 questions pertaining to 4 different domains, be it social connectivity, academic engagement, and so on. The student will answer those questions, and then Baseline will spit out a report based on where that student is across the country relative to other districts using Baseline or BASE. And then you're able to take that assessment multiple times, so you can show improvement or potentially show a decline. That, of course, tells you when you may have an issue. But I think what will be particularly helpful to you, Bella, particularly when it's implementing BASE and trying to figure out how can we do this easily, Baseline will give a recommended prescription of the content that student needs based on their scores from Baseline. So I too, we released it, as you know, in March. So hasn't been around too long, but we're very excited for you to see it.
Yes, we are too.
Okay. If we think through where you're going, so in the future, there are some outcomes, I'm assuming, as strategic as you are with implementing not just BASE, but the social emotional learning platforms that you have up to this point. I'm assuming there are some specific outcomes that you have in mind or that you're solving for. Can you share some of those?
Reducing the amount of time for students, reducing the amount of disruption to instruction, improving overall well-being of the student, not necessarily, like, I know we focus very much on instruction and grades and achievement, but also developing long-term skills for them, pro-social behavior. And again, I see, like, on the screen, it talks about attendance, and I think that's one of the things we're also focused on, is trying to improve our attendance, graduation rates, But I mean, if the student is not functioning on a level, it's going back maybe back to Maslow's hierarchy, where the
Yeah.
basic needs are met first for them, so that we can, teach them. Because if they're not emotionally available, or it's difficult to expect us then to have a student who's going to earn A's if they're having struggles with their own emotional functioning.
Right. Right. Well, I know that we have taken your time this morning, Belle, and I thank you so much for you volunteering it. The value that you have been able to provide to those listening today is huge. As I mentioned at the beginning, our goal with this webinar series is to share with others what people like you, the existing base partner, are doing to help change the lives of students. So thank you not only for your time, but for your investment in the students of Charles County. We love the fact that we get to partner with you and make a difference. Obviously, if there's anything more we can do to help you, you let us know. But Bella, thanks again for your time today. Cannot thank you enough, again, for the investment that you're making in the lives of students. And I'm hoping that this allows you to not just improve your legacy, but gives you confidence that you'll have a great one someday. Thanks, Bella.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.